All right, let's get into Friday feedback. As you can imagine, much of what I heard from folks over the last week has been related directly or indirectly to the failed assassination attempt against Donald Trump, to the Republican National Convention. Let's dive right into it. You can email info@davidpakman.com. Sometimes we'll feature things posted on the subreddit or as YouTube comments, or really could be anything. We start today with a post on the David Pakman Show subreddit, which you can find at davidpakman.com/Reddit. User LLTNT342 weighs in about the "this will only help Trump" narrative and says, "We've obviously seen some unprecedented and dramatic events unfold this election cycle. It seems every time something bad happens with Trump, the media runs with this narrative that it will energize people and help boost him. I have a hard time understanding the logic here. His base is with him regardless, that's obvious. Whether they're more excited to vote because of a criminal conviction or whatever seems irrelevant. We also know there are quite a few undecided folks, but the overwhelming majority are not undecided because they like both. It's because they dislike both candidates, and they usually dislike Trump because of chaos, divisive rhetoric, criminal charges, etc. So how are any of these recent events a boost to Trump? If anything, isn't it a reminder why they are turned off from Trump? What am I missing? Well, you're missing the texture of many of these sort of on the edge folks. It's true that a lot of undecided voters are undecided because they don't like either of the candidates. But a bunch of those undecided voters don't like either of the candidates, but for different reasons. And many of the right-leaning or hard right people who aren't sold on Trump aren't sold on him, not for reasons of policy, but for reasons that are sort of more personality driven. And what seems to be happening in the aftermath of the assassination attempt anecdotally, and there's a counterpoint to this, what seems to be happening is that there are folks who are kind of like, I like low taxes, I like low regulation, I like strength on immigration or whatever language they want to use. But I don't know, I just don't know if Trump has my best interest in mind, or he's kind of pompous, or I don't know. And then now all of a sudden Trump's a victim. They're trying to silence Trump. They are trying to kill Trump, the stuff that has been floated over the last week. And they go, you know what? At the end of the day, I usually vote for Republicans. I was thinking of staying home, but I won't. Or I was thinking of voting third party, but I won't. So I agree in general that for most people, I mean, listen, I completely denounce all violence and find the attack on Trump's life deplorable. And there's no way I'm voting for him in November unless the alternative is worse. And Biden's a better alternative. Harris is a better alternative. Whitmer's a better alternative. Josh Shapiro, Gavin Newsom, they're all better alternatives. So against the violence, but it doesn't really affect my vote in any way. These elections are won on the fringes. It's who turns out. It's who turns out in the 3 to 5 states likely to make a difference. And I don't think it's crazy to think, in general, Trump benefits. Again, you can say debates don't matter, but in general, I think Trump benefited from Joe Biden's poor debate performances and some poor performances since in public. I think overall, Trump benefits from the failed assassination attempt. I don't think Trump benefits from selecting J.D. Vance as his VP. And I've said that earlier in the week. I think Vance hates Trump, but that's besides the point. It's not clear to me that that really helps him in any way. Okay. Aplo says, I can't take it anymore. The stress of this election was already killing me, and now this S happens. I've been in a consistent state of high-grade anxiety for weeks. I'm detached, politically obsessed, reading and consuming political media and punditry 24/7. I can't do it anymore. It's making me effing ill in body and mind. I have an addiction that's giving me the illusion I can control a single effing thing, and I can't. I'm done. Ditching my Reddit account, retooling my YouTube feed, I think they mean. I'll be voting blue down ballot in November. Pray democracy prevails. See you guys then. This is not an unhealthy realization. As many of you know, when I'm done producing the Friday show, I check out of politics until Monday. I only found out about the assassination attempt against Trump because one of my colleagues texted me and said, there's been a shooting at a Trump rally. And then I looked, and indeed, and then I decided to come and do a live stream because it was very important breaking news. But what I would suggest at minimum, is first is the realization I actually can't control a lot of this stuff. I can vote, I can phone bank, but I can't control a Republican 20-year-old going and shooting the Republican candidate with a firearm that Democrats have been wanting to ban. I can't control if that makes more people want to vote Trump. I can't. I can control my vote. That's for sure. So listen, I would recommend never engaging with this stuff 24/7. First of all, and even better, have days where you simply don't engage with it at all. Environmental Bus posted on Reddit, I really hope the Biden campaign and Democrats don't change their messaging about Trump. I know the Biden campaign put a pause on attack ads in light of the assassination attempt, but once they turn them back on, they need to go full throttle. Trump is still a civilly liable rapist, convicted felon who tried at steal the last. I think they mean to steal the last. Presumably they mean the election. Yeah. So there's two parts to this. There's the political advertising part with Biden. And I respect and sympathize with the decision from the Biden campaign to stop the attack ads in the aftermath of the assassination attempt. There was the idea, we're going to have unity. Everybody's going to come together. We're going to turn down the temperature. And within 24, 48 hours, MAGA had gone back to its old bag of tricks. Biden caused this. Left-wing media caused this. Democrats caused this. David Pakman, you caused it. I was getting emails saying. And of course, how Democrats caused a Republican to shoot a Republican with a gun Democrats have been wanting to ban, and in an environment where Republicans have been scaling up the violent rhetoric for 8 years, doesn't make any sense. They've fully gone back to that exact same rhetoric, fight, fight, fight at the RNC and all of this stuff. So at some point, understanding that the greater good is preventing another Trump presidency, he survived. He should now be defeated with votes and watch as someone else gets to be president. At some point, you've got to fight them as far as the campaign goes with the same sort of advertising and tools that they are using. And they are going right back to the sleepy Biden, all that stuff. And at some point, the Biden campaign needs to run a campaign. That's absolutely true. They've already started to, by the way. President Biden doing some campaign events and so on. Let's go to Facebook now, where Kathleen says, as a Canadian, I'm terrified about Trump becoming president again, but it seems like a done deal. With the courts protecting him, Biden unable to use the legal system to extend democracy, my hope is that Republicans will take up the idea of building a wall on their north border to protect them from the horrors of Canada. If you have any influence, please encourage the northern wall. Yeah, I mean, listen, the fear is understandable and warranted to some degree. I also think that there is a lot here that is beyond any individual's control, and it's really useful in these situations to focus on what we can control. It is terrifying, the prospect of Trump becoming president again. And I don't know if it's a done deal. And my instinct is the failed assassination attempt does help the guy. And the immunity decision and the decision from Eileen Cannon about the documents case, a lot of stuff. It's like it's all falling off the wall. But we all can still vote. And with turnout in general in the United States between 50 and 60, 62%, just a little more turnout from people who say, hey, a lot of this stuff that's going on is absolutely deplorable. The attack, all these, but we've got to prevent another Trump presidency. Call it naive, but I am maintaining some cautious optimism here. A lot of conspiracies in the aftermath of the assassination attempt as well. Here is Jose, who says, to me, the whole thing is a setup by Trump and his people. I don't know how no one sees that. And then Ronald says, I felt the same way, but since I learned a bullet really did graze his ear based on a photographer testimony and photo, now I don't know. I continue to be concerned about the amount of conspiratorial rhetoric here. As we talked about on Monday, if you want to play the motive game, you can concoct motive from both Trump and Biden to, quote, stage such an event. You could say Trump wanted it in order to get sympathy and to invigorate people and to paint himself as the strong guy who survived it or whatever the case may be. Okay. You could also say Biden would be incentivized to stage something like this in order to take the attention away from 72% of the country saying he's not cognitively fit to be president or whatever. All we have is these vague analogies or allusions to motive, and we don't have anything else. It really does seem like a 20-year-old Republican who was angry or disturbed for one or another reason, got a firearm that many of us have been saying shouldn't even be legal for a long time, and shot the Republican candidate, grazed his ear, and killed someone else in the crowd. That's what I have evidence for right now. And I don't really know where the conspiracy theorizing gets us. If something changes about the facts that we know regarding this, I will absolutely tell you. Combo Nickel says, petition for David to not have Cenk Uygur back on anytime soon. Please comment if you agree and would prefer a break from Cenk on the show. I found the interview unlistenable. I'll be very honest. The audience, my audience, was very split about the Cenk Uygur interview. There were people who wrote to me and said things like this: never have Cenk back on, couldn't stand him, absolutely terrible, disagree with everything he said. I also had people who wrote to me and said, as I think about the situation in terms of the replace Biden or not stuff, does Biden have a shot or not question, I think Cenk made good points. That was another perspective reflected in the audience. So, I don't know how frequently we have any guests on. There's no plan to have Cenk back on in the immediate future just because we don't have guests on that frequently. But there was a complete lack of unanimity in the audience about Cenk's perspectives on replacing Joe Biden. PVW on YouTube says Biden was losing before the debate. He needed a big win to turn things around. And now, in spite of massive expenditures on commercials in swing states and one win in one rally, he's still losing badly. How is he going to turn things around? I concede that being the incumbent is a big advantage, but that's all he's got. And there are plenty of times where that has failed to be enough. We need a real candidate with no major handicaps, someone that can hammer Trump on his weaknesses, and there are many, and we're running out of time. That is another view that is strongly represented in my audience. And as I've said before, I don't think either view is crazy. The idea that the risk of replacing a candidate this late in the game is worth it because it seems to be going so poorly for Biden, it's not an insane conclusion to come to. The other perspective, that nothing that has happened changes the fundamentals of this. Incumbents tend to get reelected. Nobody's really polling better than Biden on average, except for some anecdotal polls. That's not a crazy conclusion either. And I am of both minds on the issue for sure. Garrett says, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative does not matter. We need to come together as Americans and condemn this. No candidate deserves this. Despite the dozens or hundreds of emails and comments I've received from people saying, David, you incited violence. You promote violence. I have never promoted violence on this program. And I immediately condemned and denounced the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. We need to win with votes, not with bullets. And even winning with bullets would not only be illegitimate, obviously, but it also doesn't really solve the problems we're trying to solve, because violence of any kind emboldens authoritarians like Trump. That's a critical issue that must be understood. So I agree, Garrett. I wish that Republicans, after calling for unity and turning down the temperature, hadn't immediately gone back on that and started to turn up the temperature. And by the way, it's not wrong to remind ourselves that when Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, was brutally attacked and beaten in his home, they on the right did not adhere to the very standard they are demanding from the left now. They want to hold the left in the aftermath of the assassination attempt to a reasonable standard, which is we all should denounce this. But they didn't do it in the Paul Pelosi incident. And it's just another instance of hypocrisy from the most hypocritical political movement that I can recall. We have a great bonus show for you today. Make sure you're signed up at joinpacman.com. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel for free at youtube.com/The David Pakman Show. We'll see you on the bonus show, and I'll be back here on Monday.